Well, good afternoon, everybody. Just to introduce myself, because I haven't had the pleasure of meeting all of you yet, but my name's Cathy McClean, and I'm acting as manager at Inch Creek Hatchery. Now, Inch Creek Hatchery, there's two parts to the hatchery. We have one side where we do where we raise coho, chum, and steelhead, and then we have another part to the hatchery fenced off, and that's the Inch Creek Sockeye satellite. And earlier today, Christine was talking about the value of having a good source of virus-free water, and we have that at Inch Creek. All our water is pumped groundwater, and it's beautiful. Now at the Sockeye satellite at Inch Creek, we enhance two stocks of sockeye, Pitt River and Cultus Lake sockeye. But the objectives that we have in enhancing these two are quite different. Now I borrowed this figure from Fisheries and Oceans wild salmon policy. Now there's a lot of details to this policy, and I'm not going to get into any of them really, except to illustrate to you that part of the policy is this traffic light system. A stock or group of stocks that is in the red zone, like the Cultus Lake sockeye are, that means that the abundance of wild fish in that population is below a certain benchmark. And what drives the management of those fish are concerns about protecting the fish and increasing their numbers. The Pitt River sockeye, on the other hand, you'll notice they're in the green zone, which means that the wild component of this run is typically above a certain benchmark, and what drives the management of Pitt River sockeye are more economic and social considerations. So enough of that. The Salmon Enhancement Program also has a certain number of reasons that we enhance stocks, and you can see the top one, conservation, that applies to the Cultus sockeye. And then the next one down, harvest, that is the reason, or one of the reasons we enhance the Pitt sockeye. This is just a map of the Lower Mainland, just to give you an idea of where these two stocks reside relative to the city of Vancouver. Cultus Lake is 100 kilometers east of Vancouver, and it's a very, very popular lake in the summertime with swimmers and boaters. It's a zoo out there, and we get 1.5 million visitors every year there. It's also a lake that has had research conducted there for almost 100 years. So not only is Cultus Lake popular with visitors and researchers, but it is also home to a population of late-run Fraser sockeye that spawn in the bottom of the lake. And this photo was taken by some divers that we had in the lake a couple of years ago. All you can see are males in this photo, but trust me, there were some females there as well. They're just hiding. So this graph shows Cultus sockeye spawners returning to the lake, and as you can see, there's ups and downs to the numbers that have come back through the decades. But the overall point that I wanted to make with this graph is that the Cultus sockeye have been declining. And the collapse of the Cultus sockeye was originally attributed to three primary causes: overfishing, reductions in marine survival, and then in 1999 and 2000, we had very high pre-spawn mortality levels, over 90% during those years. And that pre-spawn mortality was associated with parva capsula infection. So after this collapse in May of 2003, The COSEWIC, the Committee on the Status of Endangered Wildlife, designated the Cultus Lake sockeye as endangered. And in 2004, the federal government decided not to list it under the Species at Risk Act, just because they saw potential economic impacts of curtailing or closing fisheries. So in 2004, Fisheries and Oceans formed a recovery team which came up with a conservation strategy. And this recovery conservation strategy involved a number of different aspects: a captive breeding program plus hatchery supplementation, good assessment of spawners moving into the lake and smolts coming out of the lake, the removal of predators, and specifically the removal of pike minnow, which was meant to increase freshwater survival, and there was also a harvest reduction aspect to the recovery strategy. For the hatchery supplementation and captive breeding program, there are 3 different sites that were used in this: the Cultus Lake Lab, Inch Creek Hatchery, and Rosewall Creek Hatchery, which is on Vancouver Island. At the Cultus Lake Lab, what we do is we collect the adults as they are moving up into the lake. They come up Sweltzer Creek, that's how they access the lake, and we have a counting fence on Sweltzer Creek. So they start showing up kind of last week in October through last week in August through October, and we collect our brood during that time frame. And speaking of temperature, actually, Sweltzer Creek and the surface water of the lake can be quite warm. This past summer, that last week in August, the water temperature in Sweltzer was 23 degrees Celsius. So we have to be careful. We usually opt, or we do opt not to collect brood when it's that warm. But the brood that we do collect, each one gets a Pitt tag. We also give them an injection of antibiotic. They get treated Vitalife, Aquacalm, and they get treated also with Parasite S while they're in holding, and they're held on the deeper, cooler lake water. And the egg takes are done starting in mid-November until the beginning of January. This is just, these guys are netting the brood out of the collection area on Sweltzer. So at Cultus Lake Lab, when we do the egg takes, we follow the Alaskan Sockeye protocols. We use matrix fertilization techniques. We collect 200 brood fish, and we're aiming for 500 crosses, so that gives you an idea of the scale of the matrix fertilization we're doing. We also disease screen our broodstock at the egg take, and we're screening them for IHN and BKD. Once the eggs get to the eyed stage, and once we hear they have a clean bill of health, we move them to Inch Creek Hatchery. Currently at Inch Creek Hatchery, we have anywhere from 225,000 to 300,000 eggs coming over from Cultus Lab. We keep them from the eyed stage to release, and we have 3 different release strategies. A summer release of 1.5 gram fry, 4 gram par in October, and we also release some of them as smolts. The fish are also all marked, of course, adipose fin clip for the fry and the par, adipose and CWT for the smolts, and previously we actually used adipose and calcine marking for the par releases. We don't use captive breeding any longer, but we did use it from brood year 2000 to 2009. And the reason the captive breeding program was launched was that there was a recognition that normal hatchery supplementation was not going to rebuild the stock. So the goal of the captive brood program was to produce 500 captive brood spawners annually. And then in 2010, the program was phased out, but we did carry on. We have carried on the hatchery supplementation. Just showing this photo, Rosewall Creek Hatchery on Vancouver Island. This is where we kept our captive brood fish when we had them. And what we did with the program was we would take 3 eggs from each of those 500 crosses I was talking about, take them over to Rosewall. The fish were interesting in that 90% of them matured at age 3, whereas the Cultus Sockeye is typically an age 4 fish. And this was significant actually because with the sockeye in the lake maturing at age 4 and then the captive brood at age 3, it really mixed up genetics nicely for us. We've done well as far as genetic diversity. The eggs from these spawners at Rosewall Creek were transferred back to Inch unless we didn't have room for them, and then the excess eggs were kept at Rosewall and released, brought over directly from there and put into the lake. Now, as I mentioned, there were other components to the recovery strategy, and one of them was keeping a good count, good assessment at the Cultus fence of adults moving into the lake and smolts moving out of the lake. And the picture on the left-hand side is of the fence on Swalzer Creek. Who is that guy on the fence, Don?
Pretty good looking.
He's good looking, yeah. And then there's one of my coworkers counting smolts there on the right-hand side. 3. Another aspect of the recovery strategy was predator control. And you can see the culprit right here. Since 2005, approximately 70,000 of these have been removed from Cultus Lake. And initially, we did see an improvement in fried smolt survival, but just recently there's been a decline in that survival to levels that are actually below the when the removal program was initiated. Besides removing pipe minnow from Cultus Lake, another tactic that we have is our release strategy. I think when the program started, the fry were released from shore, but then that's where the pipe minnow congregate. And so now when we release our fry and our parr, we give them a boat ride out into the middle of the lake. They avoid those pipe minnow somewhat. They can get down into the deep, cool water, and they do much better. Just with regards to harvest reduction, there is on the column on the left, you can see what is considered allowable in terms of Cultus sockeye that are caught in fisheries and what has actually been caught. These are numbers that preliminary numbers and that they've crunched, and they actually use a proxy to work out the actual. Overall, Cultus sockeye spawners, you can see that the survival or the returns are all over the place, up and down, and that red line is the lower benchmark that we want to hit for wild spawners, and we're not there yet. Okay, now I'm going to talk about the Pitt Lake. You can see the Pitt Lake relative to Cultus. Pitt Lake is a beautiful lake, a big lake, a very deep lake in certain spots. The south end of the Pitt Lake, there's the Lower Pitt River, which connects it to the Fraser, and the north end is the Upper Pitt River, and that's where the Sockeye spawn. And these are the Pitt River Sockeye. They spawn, as I said, in the Upper Pitt River. They are a large sockeye, and the reason they're large is that on average 85% of them return as 5-year-olds. Now, after seeing Dawn's presentation this morning, I'm not sure if I have all these dates right, but there's been enhancement activity in the Upper Pitt River for a while. It was, the hatchery was run by the Salmon Commission, and then Fisheries and Oceans took it over, and in 2003, the hatchery operations for the Pitt Sockeye got moved to Inch Creek. The Pitt River is a flashy river prone to erosion, and when there are rain events like the one on the right, that affects the survival, obviously, quite a bit. Pitt River sockeye egg takes take place during the first 2 weeks in September, and it's a golden time. The days start with a boat ride up the lake, 10-kilometer drive up a gravel logging road. We take the eggs in the milt, and then we take them back down the lake to Inch Creek Hatchery. We release them as fry in the springtime. Our current release target is 1 million, which is down from larger releases in the past. And the fry are barged up Pitt Lake and released actually into Corbold Creek. All fry are thermal marked. This shows how the Pitt River sockeyes are doing, and you can see they're doing pretty well. So just to wrap up, to compare Cultus and Pitt sockeye programs, the objective, the Salmon Enhancement Program objective for Cultus is conservation. For Pitt sockeye, it's harvest. As far as the wild salmon policy status goes, Cultus is in the red zone, Pitt are in the green zone. At Cultus, we use a number of different fish culture techniques, matrix spawning. We have the captive brood program. We have a number of different release strategies as well, fry and smolts, and we mark them with ad clips and coded wire tags, whereas the Pitt is the more traditional one-to-one spawning, released as fry, and they're all thermal marked. Successes, we have been successful at Cultus at maintaining the genetic diversity of Cultus sockeye. The challenge, though, is that the population is not yet self-sustaining, and there's a number of questions. The success of the spawners in the lake is uncertain, so continued work is needed there. The Pitt sockeye, the success is our enhanced contribution has provided a good, solid, stable buffer. And the future is that we've seen reduced harvest levels, so we've reduced our fry releases as a result. And if harvest levels change, we'll have to respond. So just to close up, I wanted to thank everybody because there are a number of groups and people, too numerous to mention, that need to be thanked for their hard work and dedication on these behalf of these two stocks. So thank you very much.